Chicago Fire Season 13 unexpectedly writes out a character ahead of Carver and Ritter's finale exit. Warning: spoilers ahead for Chicago Fire Season 13, Episode 21. Ahead of Sam Carver and Darren Ritter's exit, Chicago Fire Season 13, Episode 21. The bad guy effectively writes out one character. The One Chicago franchise is not new to cast leaving throughout its more than a decade on the air. As ensemble procedurals, Dick Wolf knows that actor rotations are part of what keeps his show fresh and long-running. That said, it would be an understatement to say that the last few years have been tumultuous at Firehouse 51, considering everyone that has left for various reasons. The Chicago Fire Season 12 finale saw the biggest departure of the show thus far. Chief Bowden left Firehouse 51 after a surprise promotion that would elevate his position in the CFD. Before that, Sylvie Brett and Blake Gallo also left. Between those and the weekly cast rotations as a cost-cutting ploy, it's sometimes difficult to remember which characters are still in the show. As it approaches the end of the year, Chicago Fire is once again losing two characters, Ritter and Carver. However, before their exits, the first responder procedural sneaks in another departure in The Bad Guy. In Chicago Fire Season 13, Episode 21, Violet returns after skipping the previous week as part of NBC's cast rotating schemes. Unfortunately, her comeback comes with a slew of challenges, primarily when it comes to her personal life. Her resurgence also coincides with the reappearance of Flynn, the lawyer that Violet has been seeing since earlier this year. The pair immediately had a connection during their chance meeting, but while it seems like their relationship has been smooth sailing, there are issues bubbling on the surface. In the end, Violet decides to break up with Flynn, effectively ending his role in Chicago Fire. Flynn's suggestion about Violet becoming a doctor versus a massive conflict between the pair. As it turns out, she has been dealing with the same passive-aggressive comments from those around her for years, ever since she chose to become a paramedic. There's no denying that Violet is good at her job, and being a doctor is attainable for her, assuming she wants to do it. In the end, Violet decides to break up with Flynn, effectively ending his role in Chicago Fire. Without his connection to her, there's very little to no chance of seeing him again. Violet and Flynn's conflict in Chicago Fire Season 13, Episode 21 is technically about how she doesn't appreciate him, suggesting that she's settling in her job. That being said, the issue that broke them up isn't really about that. Flynn actually recognizes this immediately right after it sinks in that she is breaking up with him about something that they can seemingly talk about, assuming that both of them want to fix the mess. Sadly, that isn't the case. Ultimately, Violet has always been in love with Carver, even when she thought that she was having a good time with Flynn. At that point, however, she and her coworker couldn't find a way to make things work, considering their respective personal baggage. Carver hasn't been much of a factor in Chicago Fire Season 13 since he sought help for his alcoholism. But in his absence, Violet realizes how much he means to her. Flynn has been involved in other work-related plots during his time in Chicago Fire Season 13, but there is just not enough story for him in the show without his ties to Violet. He could still return in the future, especially since One Chicago is known for bringing back characters for shorter arcs to drum up nostalgia. Carver's inevitable exit in Firehouse 51, however that storyline plays out, might even be a path for him to appear in Chicago Fire Season 14. In the end, it's Violet who is in a lose-lose situation here. The wind howled down the streets of Chicago like it always did, but this time it felt different. Heavier, as though the city itself was bracing for something it didn't quite know how to handle. Inside Firehouse 51, things were shifting in ways no one saw coming, not even Bowden. Everyone knew the season finale was going to hit hard. Carver and Ritter had already made their intentions clear. One was heading west to fight wildfires, needing a deeper sense of purpose. The other had accepted a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to lead an LGBTQ plus youth crisis response unit, his calling louder than the firehouse bell. The house had made peace with it, sort of. But no one was prepared for the sudden, quiet exit of another beloved figure, Violet McCamey. No press release. No fanfare. No farewell scene teed up with emotional piano music. Just gone. It all started 2 episodes before the finale, when Violet seemed more distracted than usual. She'd always been focused, sharp, even, since Evan Hawkins' death, but this was something else. She was quieter, her eyes darting off when no one was looking. Even Brett couldn't crack her. When Sylvie asked her what was wrong during a late-night cleanup in the raid bay, Violet just offered a tired smile and said, "I think it's time." The next morning, her locker was empty. Cap was the first to notice. "Hey, anyone seen Violet?" he asked, munching a protein bar. She was supposed to be on Ambulance 61 today. Mouch frowned. "I thought she swapped shifts with Brett. Or was that yesterday?" Stella checked her phone. No text. No call. That's not like her. They brushed it off as a one-time thing, maybe an emergency. But then a courier arrived an hour later with a manila envelope addressed to Bowden. Inside, her resignation letter and a single line handwritten at the bottom. "Thank you for everything. I need to breathe again." No one knew what to say. In the lounge, Ritter stood stunned, still wearing his turnout gear from the morning drill. She didn't even say goodbye. Carver, sitting on the couch with a cup of burnt coffee, let out a low whistle. "Damn, and I thought I was the dramatic one." "Not the time, man," Cruz muttered, clearly frustrated. "We're losing half the house, and now Violet just goes sus. I'm just saying, something's up. You don't do 9 years on the job and walk out without a word unless something's really broken." Ritter looked like he'd been punched in the gut. His eyes met Brett's. "She's not okay." And she wasn't. 3 days later, Gallo found her. She was sitting alone on a bench by the lake, bundled in an oversized hoodie, staring out at the choppy water like it might give her answers. She didn't flinch when he sat next to her. "You were always gonna be the one who found me," she said softly, her voice almost lost to the wind. "You're not the kind of person who disappears, Violet. You're the kind of person who fights. So what happened?" She didn't answer right away, just pulled out a wrinkled photo from her pocket, one of her and Hawkins at a department gala, laughing, young, untouched by tragedy. "I thought I had healed," she finally said. "But I didn't. I've been carrying him in my chest like a collapsed lung, pretending I could still breathe. Every call, every shift. I thought I was getting stronger, but I was just getting numb." Gallo listened quietly, knowing any words would feel hollow. "I thought I could stay, ride it out, but then I saw Carver packing his gear, heard Ritter talking about his new job, and I realized everyone's chasing something that makes them feel alive again. I've been doing the opposite. So what now?"